First rule of this channel, we not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. So this is going to be the 2024 fantasy football preview for the Denver Broncos. General theories about fantasy football are wanting pieces of good offenses at the cheapest possible prices. Well, when it comes to the Broncos this year, this is a team that we project to be a bad offense. Generally, you want the major pieces of those offenses at the lowest possible cost. So it's going to be very similar to good offenses, except I want the low end pieces of the good offenses at the price that I'm going to be spending on them. And then on a bad offense, I still want pieces of the best pieces of those offenses at the lowest possible cost. I have, if I can remember which one it is, I have Mike Evans pulled up from last year. Right before my draft, I went and looked it up before I recorded today. He was going 58 overall on ESPN, wide receiver 25. He finishes wide receiver 5. That offense was supposed to be bad. It was a Baker Mayfield led Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, and you spend 58 overall, you get wide receiver 5 return on investment. So there, it's still there. And when we talk about some of these guys, like there are still roads to win leagues with bad offenses. It's just going to be more how to attack them. Most of the time, it's probably going to be better to allow them to be someone else's problem and either attack them as a priority free agent, or then we're going to go do the trades in the leagues where we do trades in. Remember, I have written down here, like, I don't win leagues by following what other people do. I win leagues by like making my own decisions, evaluating my own information, and trying to attack how they were wrong. That's probably a better theory than listening to what everybody else thinks. And we're going to talk about a little bit about Bo Nix later. I'm just looking at my notes. The hit rate for the first 5 rounds of the draft is going to be about 50%. It's a coin flip. And then after that, rounds 6 through 9, it drops to about 30%. Rounds 10 through 13 are going to be about 10%. What I tend to do is I write down my pinpoint targets, and I am a slave to ADP up until about round 5. And then after that, like, I don't care what the ADP of a player is. Like, I go up and I go get the guys that I want, because I have about a 50 to 70% hit rate on targeting the guys that I want and then getting them to return on that investment outside of those top 5 rounds. Let's see. So to start off, and this was kind of fortuitous, wasn't intending this. Bo Nix signed his rookie deal today. He is, part of the Denver Broncos coming down the line. The other news with the Broncos is Russell Wilson. He was their starting quarterback last year. He got cut. He signed with the Steelers. Jerry Jeudy, he got traded. 87 vacated targets going to the Browns. Let's see. The Broncos last year, this is not exactly going to be an apples to apples conversation. So with Russell Wilson, they were the 7th worst offense. They were 21 points a game last year. That's like bottom 3rd. They were a little surprising, a little bit higher than I thought they were going to be on a points per game basis than they look to be. First overall draft pick, we already talked about Bo Nix, quarterback out of Oregon. We'll talk about him later. Troy Franklin was the 4th round pick, wide receiver out of Oregon, to go back and pair with his teammate. Audric Estime, running back out of Notre Dame, he goes in the 5th round of the Broncos. Like the player, don't like the draft capital, don't like the landing spot. He's going to be athletically limited. Probably not going to be able to win leagues this year. Don't know anything about Devon Vele, the wide receiver out of Utah. Again, guys that go outside of the 4th round of the draft, 5th and below, have a hard road to make rosters. So I don't really care about them until we start learning something about them, or there's a road for them to carve out a fantasy relevant road. And then I don't know anything about Nick Gargulio, the center out of South Carolina, 7th round pick, other than he is a definite candidate to be a channel mascot in the future. All right, let's move on to Bo Nix, 1st round draft capital. Very difficult to evaluate, anybody coming out of college into the NFL, let alone the quarterback position. I've just kind of given up. I don't really care what other people have to say. His pro and his cons are about the same thing. He may just be a game manager. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That's not necessarily a good thing. It's going to be difficult to see how he projects to the NFL level. I just kind of given up. I was wrong about Justin Herbert. I was wrong about Patrick Mahomes. I bring up Justin Herbert because as a rookie, when he went to the Chargers, it looked like he was going to be a bust. That's what everybody else was talking about. As a rookie in fantasy football, he finishes as quarterback 9. It is there. It doesn't matter whatever anybody else thinks. We kind of want to be thinking outside the box about how guys can get us there. And the other guy to talk about this was, remember, Brock Purdy was the last pick in the draft, and he just lost the Super Bowl. So, there you go. So moving on from this, the biggest thing with Bo Nix is if he is given the job over Jared Stidham, that doesn't really mean anything. If he earns the job over Jared Stidham, that's good news. If Jared Stidham is able to fend him off and starts the season, that's a pretty good indication that Bo Nix is probably a bust at that point. Overall, Jared Stidham as a fantasy backup, I'm going to say is like maybe he can be like okay to the value of the guys that you put into him. Probably going to be better guys. You're probably going to also be worse guys. Not going to be good overall from a fantasy perspective. Just the peace of mind of knowing the backup for the Broncos is probably not very good. Starting quarterback may not be very good. Something to be looking forward. Bo Nix, on the other hand, is going to be a little undervalued as far as I'm concerned. He's going on Fantasy Pros at quarterback 32. I have him at 20, 248 overall. On Underdog, he is quarterback 31, 209. ADPs are going to be going all over the place. I had to rewrite them in before I went live from last night. If you're wondering, the biggest thing to look at with this, he wasn't even on ESPN to be at ranked, is Bo Nix is going to have a little bit of this rushing upside that we look for in a quarterback. So first 2 years at Auburn, remember NCAA is weird, COVID, NIL deals, transfer portal. He played 5 years. First 2 years at Auburn, he does 300 yards rushing, 7 touchdowns, and then another 160 in 2021 with 4 touchdowns. 2022, his first year with the Ducks in Oregon, he does 510 yards rushing, 14 touchdowns. And then 2023, he does 228 and 6 touchdowns. There is enough limited upside with these, with Bo Nix's rushing ability that he could theoretically finish in the sub-elite category of quarterback. So quarterback 1. So that's just something to be paying attention to. Am I saying that I think he's going to do that? No, I'm not. But what I am saying is be advised that like he does have a little bit of the nimbly bimblies that we want. So it's probably not going to be unfair. And this is funny when I was trying to look up a comparison. Is Russell Wilson last year with the Broncos. He did 3,000 yards passing, 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions to go along with 341 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. That did about 17 points a game. Again, your league settings and my settings are going to be different, but 17 points a game. That made Russ like a low-end quarterback 1, a high-end streamer, high-end quarterback 2. That's probably not going to surprise me if that's what Bo Nix's range of outcomes is. Yes, he's going to have Bryce Young in his range of outcomes. 2,800 yards passing, 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 253 rushing, no touchdowns. He's going to have Bryce Young. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that like it's also not going to be surprising for him to really get up there and flirt with this Trevor Lawrence stat line of about 4,000 yards passing, 21 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 339 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns. Because again, he's going to have a little bit of rushing ability. It's going to be difficult to see if he's like Sam Howell with the 5 rushing touchdowns, or if he's going to be a relatively like not a rusher at the NFL level. Remember, CJ Stroud was not a rusher in college. He was able to find a way to fall into the end zone three times on the ground. The career high in rushing in his rookie year when he didn't do anything like the 161 that he did as a rookie when he was at Ohio State. So again, trying to parse where these guys out. That's why I have Bo Nix's quarterback 20. I realize that he probably does have a little bit of rushing upside in him. And again, I wouldn't be drafting him outside of like 2 quarterback leagues or deeper leagues that you need that quarterback dart throw to potentially get a quarterback 1, that fringe quarterback 1 in like your 14, 16 man leagues, something along those lines. If you're into those, one of those things. So moving on to the running back position with Javonte Williams. He finished last year as running back 30. He's coming off the ACL in 2022. He's in the last year of his deal. I definitely don't think the Broncos are going to be re-signing him. He'd be looking at the range of like $5 to $8 million a year, and I think they could go find something better than him off the out of the draft. The things to look at with Javonte, he is going. Let me see. He's going 79 overall on Fantasy Pros, running back 26. I have him as running back 27. ESPN, he's running back 29. Underdog, he's running back 31, 104. Let's see. So, like, I have written down here, oh, yeah, cost to re-sign versus cost to draft. That's what I was talking about with the direction I think the Broncos are going to go with him overall. So the two things that we're going to be looking for with running back is going to be red zones usage and receiving work, design receiving work. So I have James Cook pulled up from yesterday. You see that last year he had 54 targets, 44 receptions, 445, 4 touchdowns. When we look at Javonte Williams, he had a similar amount of targets and receptions, about half of the receiving yards. Again, design receiving work versus just check down monsters. And we don't really want check down monsters. We want like design receiving work. He's not going to have that. If this isn't a good offense, he's going to have limited opportunities to score in the red zone. So that's going to depress his value in and of itself. And this is before we talk about the rest of the running back room. He's going to have a hard road to finish outside of RB2 land, even if the offense is bad. If the offense is even good, we start getting into another problem with him. And remember, he did 3.57 yards per carry. Part of that could be the injury. Part of that could be because the offense wasn't necessarily good. Part of that is probably going to be because he has like a limited athletic profile, a 4.6 guy when he was coming out of college. So Samaje Perine, he was the backup running back last year. He is in the last year of his deal. They can cut him now for just a $1.5 million dead cap hit. Bringing him up, I could definitely see that he could get cut off the team. I think they'll ride Javonte Williams out if they can't trade him. I think they have no desire to trade him. I just think that like they're not going to cut him in the same way that I could definitely see them cutting Samaje Perine. They may be waiting to see if someone is willing to offer them a deal. Samaje Perine would be a pretty good backup running back for a team that needs a backup running back. Overall, he can pass block, he can pass receive, and he is a bigger thumper when it comes to that. Jaleel McLaughlin, he was the lightning back last year, finished as running back 46 overall. Definitely think he's going to be in the rotation in one way, shape, or form. All of the other three backs in the room right now, Javonte Williams 220, Perine is 236, Estime is 227. The one guy that has that like quicker type of isolation routes on linebackers is going to be Jaleel McLaughlin. So he's probably going to have a role in this offense overall. And the only other guy is Audric Estime. If more than one of these guys can't play special teams, I think it's going to be difficult for all of them to be relevant on game day. I could definitely see this turning into a really big running back by committee between these four guys if that's the way it shakes out. I could see Perine getting cut or traded. Maybe Javonte would get traded this year. I don't think they're going to. I could also see that Audric Estime doesn't even make the roster at this point. So something along the lines of these things. And that's all going to cap Javonte Williams upside at running back 20, 26, 27, 29, something about that range. That's why I would tend to stay away from him, trying to figure out, like, is it going to be a good offense? He's not going to get any design and receiving work. He's going to get a limited amount of red zone touches. And there's only the worst part of that is there may be a lot of competition for opportunity within the backfield. I'm just pulling him up really quick. So in the range of 79 overall, and I think it's already moved today. Oh, this is quarterbacks. Wrong one. I'll pull up the right one. So in the range of 79 overall, there's guys that other guys I'd be interested in. So if I'm looking at a running back, Tony Pollard probably has the ability to has a road to win me a league. I do like Dalton Kincaid as a tight end and Kyle Pitts in this range to be higher end tight end ones. If I'm looking at some of the other guys, like maybe a flyer on Nick Chubb's knee, if I really want to get into that. But from a running back situation, there's going to be guys like further on in the draft on Fantasy Pros. You're looking at second round draft pick for the Panthers. Jonathan Brooks probably has a better chance to win me a league. Blake Corum down here at 132 probably has a chance to win me a league. Those would be the guys I'd be looking for outside of very specific builds where I need an RB2, and I've waited until about pick 79 in the draft to go out and get him. Lad McConkey at 107, I'd probably be drafting higher over 79 Javonte Williams. So that's how I would generally look at him. He's got a little bit of value to be in that RB2 type of range. I could definitely see him flirting with being a bell cow from a certain perspective of how the backfield could shake out. I could also see it being a running back by committee. And then we're trying to figure out how good Bo Nix in the offense is going to be. I generally would rather this be someone else's problem than have it be mine. Because again, if I can't tell myself how he's going to win me a league, I'm just not going to be interested in any of this. There is still a road where Estime would be a league winner in all of this, looking at like injuries and guys getting shipped or cut, like I could definitely see him taking over the backfield. He's going to have more value in Dynasty because Javante's probably not going to be back. P. Ren's not going to be back. And if they like enough of a Stemme, he's going to step in and be that bell cow with the possibility of Jaleel McLaughlin eating into him a little bit in the passing game projected into the 2025 season. All right, wide receiver room. Courtland Sutton, he's going right now at wide receiver 97 on Fantasy Pros, 97 overall, wide receiver 44 on Fantasy Pros. I have him as wide receiver 41. I looked him up ahead of time. Let's see, he's wide receiver 39 on Underdog and wide receiver 51 on ESPN. Let's see, he turns 29 on October, so he's just inside the age apex if we're worried about all that stuff. Remember that the number one in offenses, and it doesn't matter who, has a road to win leagues. And I bring up our buddy Mike Evans. Am I saying that Courtland Sutton is this year's Mike Evans? No. What I'm saying is, can I tell the story where he is this year's Mike Evans at that draft capital of 97 overall? Yeah, I could. How interested am I going to be in Courtland Sutton? And from redraft perspective, I'm not. They're going to be better guys in that range that I'd be more interested going into the season at. If I pull up quarterback again, something along the lines of, like I said, Lad McGonkey at 107, I'd be more interested in. Jake Ferguson, if I punted the tight end position in that same range to finish as a top 10 wide receiver. You're looking at the most likely range of outcomes for Courtland Sutton to be somewhere in the wide receiver 3 type of range overall, and those guys tend to grow on trees, even though I definitely can think that he could finally put together a season, if I can pull him up, and finally put together a season like he did in 2019, where he finishes wide receiver 19. Hasn't had a lot of quarterback help there in Denver. Also has had injury problems. He would be the one guy I could definitely see us talking about in week 1, either going undrafted in certain leagues. I could definitely see that because of how difficult his road to win leagues are, or to go out and trade for when it looks like he may be the guy attached to Bo Nix. And again, he's in the last year of his deal. He's kind of holding out right now. That's something to be paying attention to. Troy Franklin, I have all the way down at 181, or Fantasy Pros has him at 181, wide receiver 76. I have him up at wide receiver 65. Underdog has him at wide receiver 69 and 154. So maybe we can tell the story where he's the number 2 attached to this offense. This offense would have to be in that okay range for the number 2 wide receiver or number 2 option in this offense to have any fantasy value overall. So I don't really have that much of opinion on his talent. I think he's okay. I think he's going to be capped out as a wide receiver 2 in the league overall. So I don't think he's going to ever be a wide receiver 1. Going to have a limited ability to win me a league in redraft, maybe have a little bit more value down the line in like dynasty or something like that. Marvin Mims, last year's second round draft pick, not going to be interested in him. Probably going to be more of a kick returner. The one week that he jumped up to 69% snaps was not relevant. I just don't think that Sean Payton likes him. So the road for him to even smell wide receiver 3 is probably going to be limited. The other guy, Josh Reynolds from Detroit, he signed a 2-year, $14 million deal. Good football player, probably going to slot in to be the, I would say the X or the Z in this offense overall. Going to probably be the de facto wide receiver 2, even though he's probably going to end up being the wide receiver 3 from a production standpoint. Probably Troy Franklin's going to project to be the wide receiver 2 overall. And this is probably not going to be the best offense. A couple other guys to be paying attention to is Brandon Johnson, whose snap share went up at the end of the season, and so did little Jordan Humphrey. Not all of these guys are going to obviously make the roster. You're probably looking at Courtland Sutton if he doesn't get cut, or excuse me, not cut. If he doesn't get traded, Troy Franklin because of the draft capital, and then Josh Reynolds because of the contract, being the top 3 wide receivers. After that, it probably doesn't even matter, and I don't even think the wide receiver 1 may have a lot of fantasy value in this offense. So moving on to the tight end room, Greg Dulcich, he is on Fantasy Pros 314 overall, 38 or tight end 38. I have him as tight end 31. On Underdog, he's tight end 33, 214. Probably has the best value of all the players on this team going into redraft because tight ends can't lose me a league. They can only win me a league. he could project to be the number one overall opportunity guy in the passing game. So I could definitely see him getting up to that 100 and let me see if I can pull this up, that 120 target range from a tight end position, because again, the outside of that, like who's he competing with? Maybe Courtland Sutton. So that would be the guy. He projects more to be a big slot Mike Gesicki type wide receiver. He just has the tight end designation for what we care about from a fantasy perspective. The guy who may end up actually being the starting tight end, Adam Troutman, probably never going to be fantasy relevant. He had some sleeper appeal early on when he was at New Orleans. Sean Payton went out and traded for him. His snap share peaked at 91% in the snaps in week 12. It dropped all the way to 51% snaps in week 18. So probably the money is going to be on Greg Dulcich, and that's probably going to be the most value of this whole thing. So outside of like maybe deeper leagues where I can throw that lottery ticket in the 13th round on Greg Dulcich, maybe turning the corner, third-year tight end. That's one of the things that we look at, good athletic measurables. Again, he's like a big wide receiver. That's what I would be looking at overall with the Broncos. And a couple other guys would be maybe Bo Nix having that rushing upside to be fantasy relevant this year. Maybe Courtland Sutton to get in that range of like a Mike Evans did last year with the let's see if I pull him back up. This stat line with Mike Evans last year is within the range of outcomes where he's getting like 136 targets. They are kind of similar from how their play style is. 79 receptions, 13 touchdowns. When we look at Courtland Sutton last year, 10 touchdowns on how bad an offense this was. I could definitely see that Mike Evans type of season working out for Courtland Sutton this year. It's just something to be paying attention to. Probably guys that I'm not going to be interested in any of this. Didn't change my mind on anybody. Considering I think there's guys with higher ranges of outcomes or higher possible chances to win me leagues than Courtland Sutton does attached to Bo Nix. But that's about all I got for the Broncos. I probably won't get back to the Browns until Monday.